Welcome, grasshoppers. Just catching up a little bit on the old chat for the most part from this morning. We are covering the Topalov-Kramnik match, and the Topalov-Kramnik match is a very exciting one, as Topalov had won San Luis 2005, round robin between 8 players. Kazimzhanov, who was the world champion in 2004, Michael Adams, Peter Leko, Vishy Anand, of course Topalov, Peter Svidler, and Alexander Morozevich. And Kramnik was invited as one of the highest rated players, but declined and was replaced by Judith Polgar. Now, in 2005, in Topalov's own account, it was perhaps the best match he had ever played, as he noted. And as it turns out, it was the setup for the unification match between Kramnik and Topalov, which took place in Elista, the Kalmykian capital, a town for the most part really owned by Kazimzhanov, who was the president of FIDE for, trying to think of how many decades, but at least 10 years or more, perhaps almost 20 years. Now, Elista, the capital of Kalmykia, is a very relatively primitive city. As in Topalov's own account, it resembled 1973 Russia for the most part, with the exception of the bowling alley, as he put it. The bowling alley was the only hip place, to a certain extent, outwardly looking. There was one other hotel, the White Lotus, which is a 5-star hotel. And in Topalov's opinion, it was the bare minimum for getting by, to a certain extent, the bare minimum. In this particular instance, Kramnik has white in the first game, and Kasparov has retired from chess. He was not getting a rematch with Kramnik. Kramnik, of course, upset Kasparov in 2000 with 2 victories, and I believe it was a 20-game match, and there was no chance for a rematch. Kasparov blundered by not making certain that a rematch was in order. Now, for the most part, the tension between Topalov and Kramnik was very heated. There were, throughout the match, accusations of cheating, insistence upon reviewing the tapes for how much time Kramnik spent in the toilet throughout the match, and indeed it led to a head by Game 5, which we will talk about when we get there for the most part. Now, in the first game, I think the vice president or vice prime minister of Russia and the president of the Chess Federation, Alexander Zhukov, was supposed to make the first move in the match, and he was very delayed. And then finally, I believe after a delay of perhaps 45 minutes or less than an hour, the arbiter appeared and said, "We must begin." So therefore, they held out as long as they could, and Zhukov apparently did arrive, made the first move for Kramnik, d4. And everyone expected this from Kramnik, as he was somewhat predictable. Topalov believes that preparations for e4 were also in order. And in this particular key moment, it's entirely up to Kramnik to decide what his third move is. Typically, Kramnik did not allow the Nimzo-Indian defense. And on the whole, Kramnik would usually play knight f3, but g3 could also be expected. And in this particular position, we go into the Catalan. Now, the Catalan was the staple opening for Kramnik and was relatively easy fodder to prepare for. It's not an easy opening to overcome, though. But in this position, there are two ways of dealing with it. As I've said before, good morning, Rogan. As I've said before, there are three ways to deal with the center. You either fight for the center, you attack the center, you hold the center, or you give up the center. And all three, of course, are available here in this particular position for black. Rubino, VIP, man about town, welcome and hello. Rogan Joe Sloan in the house. What? Sorry. It's just a command. What am I doing with the shout out? It's a built-in custom shout out just for him. So again, black could play c5, attacking d4 a la Teresh. And there are some intricacies involved in white not having a knight on c3. There is c6, which is the closed Catalan. And of course there is d takes c4. Now, of course, there are many ways to reach the closed Catalan or even to delay with bishop e7. But Topalov being a very exciting player, and at the time, Topalov was ranked #1 in the world. If you can imagine, Topalov was ranked #1 in the world. His victory over the crowd in St. Louis in 2005 was resounding, and it established him as a very serious player. And after the move bishop to g2, we once again have to decide even further how we're going to continue. I do vaguely remember if this is move number 7. It is not. But I do remember knight c6 being one of the topical variations in this line. Definitely attacking d4, definitely foregoing the break with pawn to c5. And of course, pawn to c5 is also possible as well. But bishop to b4 was the choice. And after bishop d2, once again, I want to mention that we can hold this position, or we could give it up with with bishop takes d2, or we could simply try to prove that the bishop doesn't really belong on d2 and put our bishop on e7. Kramnik decides to hold the space on the queen side. And you can see that there's a little bit of a tug of war here, as after queen to c2, Topalov decides to give up the bishop, having established a certain amount of space on the queen side, and captures on d2. Now this move was critical. Alexander Wojtkiewicz, in fact I have a series of books called Wojo's Weapons. Alexander Wojtkiewicz introduced this move that same year earlier that same year against Boris Gulko, who was a staple of American chess at the time. And Grishik followed up on the idea. And it was believed that black had some serious problems. As Topalov notes in his account of the match, that he and his second, Ivan Chaparinov, decided upon a course which could negate white's advantages with c6. The previous two moves, of course, were bishop d7, as played by Morozevich and others. b6 is played by Gulko. But c6, of course, attempts to hold the center squares, perhaps even threatens to hang on to the pawn. And let's see how it goes. Basically, white plays a4 in order to negate black's massive pawn advance, which, of course, Topalov never shirks from a challenge. And you can see that we have knight to e5 with a discovery on the rook. But Kramnik has another surprising move in store, which picks up the pawn on b5. After bishop a6, queen a4, you can see that the material is relatively equal. But what was going to happen after queen takes a5? What was going to happen? Perhaps the pressure of knight to c6 and the development against this pawn would be too great. But it's tough to say. Tough to say. After all, there is that latent pressure on the long diagonal. I might even need to look into this. I hadn't noticed this before. But bishop a6 was the new move that Topalov had prepared in this position. Kramnik, of course, bows out of the challenge because Topalov believes that he knew that preparations had involved around the obvious move, queen takes a5. He preferred not to enter it without looking at it further himself. Now, it's quite a wise decision, but after the move queen to b6, castles, queen takes b2, white has a lead in development in return for two very precarious looking pawns. Bishop to b5 is met by the rather surprising knight takes c4. And after bishop takes a4, knight takes b2, bishop to b5, material equality has once again been restored, and there's a really serious eyesore on the e2 square, which has to be dealt with. Kramnik does not shirk from this possibility. My shares are down. Yeah, the entire world's market is crashing to a certain extent. I believe that I have more Ethereum than ever, and it is at its lowest value. And I've lost maybe $1,000 on another stock that my brother-in-law recommended, which I'm expecting to rebound at some point, so I'm not necessarily going anywhere. Although it is a good tax write-off to sell it, I'm going to hang in there. Pegasus, Ron, how are you? So with the move knight to e5, we can see that there is a significant amount of pressure on the rook on a8. Spoiler alert, of course. Let me just put that up, just to keep us from knowing the result if no one's looked yet. But Kramnik is white in the first game. Actually, you can see the result on the game itself. Unfortunately, I should have thought about that a little bit ahead of time, but I just wanted to put the games into the database and review them as they happened. Welcome, Pegasus. You always know how to use those Twitch Global emotes. Along with Rogan. You put some wings on Rogan. That's pretty cool. You hope it's undervalued. Yeah, I understand completely. So this was the move that Topalov more or less had planned all along. He doesn't necessarily want to get in the way of the possibility of placing a knight or a bishop on a6 at a later date if needed. So all Kramnik really needs to do is batten down the hatches on e2. He also mentions that white could probably force equality and a certain draw with knight on b to c4 instead of bishop f3, but chose not to. So after knight on b to d7, knight on e to c4, it is now time for black Topalov, the most active player, the #1 player in the world at the time, to choose his course, his plan. And there are a few options here. One, in my opinion, is to put pressure on the d4 pawn by placing a rook on d8. Good one, Rogan. Basically, the player who finds the best role for his rooks faster and more purposefully should be able to prevail. And I know that I have no doubt. Uh-oh. Let me take this off the burner for a moment. I refunded a hydrate earlier. I think I missed it from... I refunded a hydrate and I refunded a hero request from the earlier stream because I had black in every game in the simul and I wasn't able to do it. Needless to say, yeah, but I can actually see that bishop f3 is a more natural move, restricting this knight. The knight's not planning on returning, and we have more active options for our rooks in general. So the finesse was probably to insert knight e5 in a position where mere mortals might have played rook e1 intending the standard e4 d5. But as bishop f3 dominates the knight on f6, the knight on e5 causes some problems, and of course Kramnik with the space advantage shies away a little bit from some exchanges. Atul, how are you? Great to see you. I also wanted to bring up one other thing. Let me just bring this up for a moment. Just to make sure, I need a small second opinion, I realize. On some of these moves. We are at 1,303 followers after the simul. Everything is good to a great extent. Yeah, he's fallen quite a bit. I got Mike. Awesome. Yeah, the current standings, well, Kramnik is no longer active. He's retired, so I don't think that it's going to return anything. Which is unfortunate. It is indeed unfortunate that he has retired. Let's see here, shift F6. And Kramnik actually Topalov actually chooses the more active move. Who does the notes to this game? One moment. So now it's up to white to decide where to place his rook, really. Or whether or not he's going to take the pawn on a5. Taking the pawn on a5 looks really, really, really risky. Really, really, really risky. Just want to see one other thing to see if there was a note on that. but let's just check it out. So Kramnik, of course, poses both rooks as best he can. And of course, Topalov does not fail in his counterattacking ability in this position. So I'm using the notes from The Informant to basically get through this game to a certain extent. But I will switch back and forth if needed. With Mikhail Marin's notes, who also wrote extensively on this particular setup. So the a5 pawn is defended, and it's possible that rook on f to c1 was a better move, according to Mikhail Marin. Black would have pushed his pawn. I know I'm a little lackluster here as I get warmed up, but yeah, rook on f to c1, a4, e3, now that there's no longer a pin, king f8, bishop d1, and after bishop takes c4, knight takes c4, rook to b4, he's holding the a4 pawn, as well as keeping activity. There's no chance for rook takes a5, rook takes a5, knight takes a5 with the discovery of bishop takes e2. And black is possibly a little better in that position. So after rook on f to b1, g5, an amazing move, honestly. An amazing move, wholly logical. Part of the reason why we moved our rook, though, was to unpin the pawn, free up the bishop from defending it, and at the same time find a good square for our bishop, which of course is going to run to the queen side in order to blockade. This is the consistent and logical idea to hold the a4 square and to prevent the pressure of the passed pawn, for the most part. Now, with the idea of bishop c6, the rook returns to perhaps its more active square, and now white insists on blockading the queen side. But, I apologize, bishop e4, white insists on blockading the king side. And now, black to move. I'm not going to go for so many candidate moves for black. I'm only going to go with the side of the, I'm going to go with Kramnik's side of this to a certain extent. But Topalov actually plays easily the most active move in this position. And after knight to d6, attempts to seize the white squares with bishop f3, and at the same time exchange one of the main defenders of the knight on a4, one of the main blockaders of the knight on a4. Let me just see something here, just so that I can hydrate already. Cheers, Pegasus. Good night, Atul. If you're still there, good night. Have a pleasant tomorrow. So what to do about this particular move? After all, it's a very funny looking move. Kramnik decides to isolate that pawn on the f3 square with the idea of perhaps surrounding it later. I don't see how he can get to it so easily. Perhaps he's just planning on the simple return to d2. if this knight isn't on d7, he may not just go here, but he might end up with the knight traveling to e5 with the same idea. In any event, white to move in this position is worth trying for. I always say, or I don't always say, I often comment that it is pretty well known that in order for a world champion to assert himself, he's going to have to bring something new to the table, either in terms of style, playing ability, or some form of next level thinking. And this is no exception, this particular one. Oh yes, I forgot that I built in a timer for this. Where is my timer? Let's see if it's here. So candidate moves, obviously, candidate moves for white in this particular position. Trying to figure out how best to challenge it. And this could be the difference between becoming the unified world champion. Even though all of the moves, this position is relatively equal. Time's up. Choices. Still rearranging my windows just a little bit. Not one? Well, one idea, obviously, might be to double rooks or to prepare to double rooks with the idea of rook to c6. Obviously, we can't double rooks just yet. But Kramnik chooses knight to c8, harassing the rook and preparing a route to the c6 square to tag these two pawns. Yeah, if knight to c4 straight away, obviously, we could run into some problems with black outposting his knight, and then both destinations are contained. The e5 square is contained and the d2 is contained. So the interesting thing is that knight to c3 would also be able to be considered. Doesn't lead to much, but it does reveal the ability to tag that pawn on a5 and possibly harass the black rook further later, either by knight on c to d5, b5, knight on d to b5, or knight to c8. Yes, great move, knight to c8. This is out of the box thinking for the most part. Or as Jacob Agard called it, inside the box thinking in his latest publication. So as it turns out, the rook challenges the knight, check, and knight to c6 does appear on the board. And Topalov has to choose a square for his rook that will not allow too much. Well, as it turns out, we're still trying to coordinate our forces. So knight to c5 and rook to b5 holds. In this particular position, we now have another situation where, like Magnus outside the box, exactly. Candidate moves for white, and we're going to basically try to decide what is going on here in this particular position. What is going on? By taking a stab at it. I would consider at least one rook move and a couple of knight moves in this particular position. I don't believe that I would have chosen the move played by Kramnik. The move played by Kramnik was a non sequitur. Now, interestingly enough, Black is a bit better in this position. Although, having left Starkist on it for a period of time, knowing the notes myself, by the way, knowing the notes myself, having left Starkist on it, White's overly cautious move, h3, as Mikhail Marin points out, could have led to certain difficulties. Let me just see what Topalov's notes are. Just one moment. I'm using the book. On the Edge in a Lista, which was written a year after the match, or published a year after the match, by Topalov. Now, Topalov says this is a good waiting move. The other move that might be preferred would have been knight to d3, with the idea of a particular knight reaching e5 in more active fashion. And Black would have, as Pegasus pointed out earlier, responded with either knight e4 or shoving his pawn as quickly as he can to a4 to create counterplay on the queen side. However, either of those moves seem to be slightly preferable for Black, and the move rook to c4 could have been prepared to attempt to blockade the pawn, which is quite something, right? Knight takes c5, d takes c5, a4, with the rook overworked, and the position would have been very equal. So instead, Kramnik's overly cautious prophylactic move leads to further trades. And it's once again up to Topalov to try to liven up this match. Obviously, placing the rooks is key, and it is extremely difficult to hold this pawn. I might have tried, though. I might have tried. Topalov, on the other hand, just lunges for it with the idea of knight to e4, rook takes f2, and you can see how everything around the king has now been loosened. A mouse from this decade. I have used a variety of mice. I, in general, like wireless mice. I am currently using a Logitech TrackMan. I think this is the M579, but there's also the 535 or 635. They're a little pricey. I like it because I don't need to move it around my desk. I just keep it in place and I just move it with my thumb. If I am in a situation where I need to move quickly on the board, though, I can always use my touch screen. So in general, Rogan, I'm probably the wrong person to ask about a mouse. A high-speed mouse did come with this computer, though, and I have thought about wielding it out every now and then, except that it is a corded mouse. And a corded mouse has many advantages over a wireless mouse in speed and accuracy. I'm not at all worried about that, though, for the most part. Well, as it turns out, Kramnik takes this opportunity to drive his opponent's king to one side of the board or another. And Topalov gives this move as one more step before reaching move 40 before he captures on a5. At this moment in the game, neither of us thought which direction the king traveled to mattered. However, with hindsight, he notes in the next move, he would have preferred, given the game continuation, king to f8. In fact, this move is very illogical to me. It leaves the f7 square unprotected. It does not centralize the king, and it does not restrict the knight on c6 in any way. So it's very awkward for black. And at long last, the exchanges occur on a5. Now this is quite a long game. I'm torn as to whether or not I'm going to go over absolutely everything. But needless to say, here we are. The counterplay with the knight restricts white's rook to guarding f2. And now the players have to make a big decision. A very big decision. Do we continue to repeat the position, or do we play for a win? And Topalov, quite illogically in this particular position, after all, he's got the more crippled pawn structure. He does have a little bit of a space advantage in the two more active pieces. But honestly, I don't really see an easy way in. At all to play a move like f6. And obviously, if he really wants to transfer his pieces either to the king side, he's creating a nearer position, or as Mikhail Marin points out, he's preventing the white knight from reaching e5. I mean, you could have prevented the white knight from reaching e5 by playing knight to d2 again as well. And I think the score of this game would have actually been different. All right, candidates for white. Oh, that's terrible. How old is your son? I don't think your son is as old as my daughter's, I would hope. Candidates for white. And I mean, he really is going for it here. I mean, black is a little better in this position as far as activity goes. But the static features of the position are making it very difficult. Kramnik has to find some move here that increases his chance of obtaining counterplay. 26? Oh no! My oldest will be 26 in July. I'm totally wrong. I guess we both really are 39. Aha! That is a very creative move. D5. Probably black will just play E5 and leave that pawn isolated and restrained. There's one more theme in this game that I was hoping that you would pay attention to, and that is Kramnik's far-reaching knight. Also heading to the back rank. Now, Topalov, of course, has very little choice here but to decide whether to play actively or conservatively. This is a little bit of the turning point of the match for the most part. Mikhail Marin believed that E5 was the best move. I realized I just put Topalov down. In order to force a draw, Kramnik's knight probably needed to challenge on E4. So the idea of the knight going to D8 is, in Topalov's eyes, a little bit of an act of desperation. Mikhail Marin believes that E5 is possibly the most active move. However, there's no guarantee that this knight even needs... this pawn even needs to be exchanged just yet. So that after a move like knight to E6, what would happen after king f7? I'm not looking at all the lines in StarKist. I'm only looking at the outward candidate moves for the most part. I have to stop saying for the most part. Otherwise, we're going to make an E-mode out of it. So what does happen after king to f7? That is the question. Is it commented upon? Mikhail Marin believed that knight to c6 was a bit more accurate. I think so too. At least from a human standpoint. And that way we don't have to do anything necessarily too untoward. If the king attempted to come closer, then the knight could keep the king restricted in this manner. Probably the same thing would have happened in the other line as well. If king f7 on knight e6, then knight to d8 check, king e7, knight to c6 check, and it looks like he could actually try to capture 2 times in a row without any fear of losing. So let's see what's happening. After king f5, oh, he didn't play this way though. Knight to d8. Topalov chose a move that dominates the knight. And it's quite amazing that Kramnik manages to escape this particular game. And I'm sure that Topalov's emotions are getting to him here, as his position is quite good with that knight being trapped. An attempt to rescue the knight. Another attempt to rescue, or at least to get the rook to be more active on the 7th rank, possibly. I don't know, though. We can never really leave the 1st rank. a check and a capture on f2 looked very, very precarious. Candidates for... I should have candidates for black here because he's doing quite well in this particular game. Should I flip the board? That is the question. Candidates for black. How does black continue? It doesn't hurt to test yourself here in this particular essence, because Topalov's move versus the candidate moves is what we're talking about. It truly is. Candidate moves for black in this position. What can black do to white? Perhaps I'm not giving you guys enough time. But like I said, when I talk to my students, I really do want them to let go of their inhibitions and just suggest moves. For example, improving the king does not look so good with king to g5, so king to f5 is certainly a candidate move. The next move that should have been considered also, knight to g5 by black, prodding the weakness on h3. And of course, if the king tries to cover it, then we can actually reassert ourselves in other ways. So, yeah, knight to g5, certainly one move. King to f5, attempting to activate all of our stuff. Remember, it's very precarious for white to give a check and or do anything without taking into account this dangerous move, followed by knight takes f2. Now, h4 was the question mark move that Topalov played. I want to see what his comments are. Basically, he spent a lot of time before playing this move, and for every move he could see a defense for white. For example, if knight to g5, king h2, rook to b2, rook f1, knight e4, and it just repeats the position. And he only considered king g7 to get the king back into the game. So h4, not approved by Starkist. Starkist liked at one moment both king to g7 and king to f5 more. So after g takes, now we just simply walk it. And it's quite a good plan, honestly. It seems like it's a very reasonable plan. But it doesn't lead to much. That is the unfortunate drawback to this. So, king h2, king h5, rook to c2, king h6. Once again, the king has a long haul in order to get out of the corner. Nobody puts baby in a corner. Now, Topalov is attempting to put white into some form of Zugzwang, but it does look like white has a lot of choices. In fact, white can probably just mark time with the white king on the h and the g6. Mikhail Marin calls this a rather torturous path to getting back into the center. It would be a good time to check out some more candidate moves for black after this move. Rook to a2. Not that they lead to anything. We're just trying to take a stab at several moves, matching whips with Vessel and Topalov. Oh man, a wave of tiredness. What to do about this position? The knight has escaped its hole on d8. There's no way to take advantage of that. One would think. Still kind of like the idea of approaching it with the king. But perhaps now that the pawn structure is cleared a bit for white, rook to a8 would be very exciting. Rook to a8 would have been very exciting. The king would have to go across g8 and f8. I don't know about this timer bit, but I'm starting to like it. Now, Topalov is playing extremely actively. He chooses to put his king on h5. However, Mikhail Marin believes that he could have attempted the same thing with king h6. And if white then pushed his pawn to d5, rook to g7 would be the way of seeking counterplay, and this is what he was up to. For the most part, this is what he was up to. Instead, he plays king h5, and how should this alter things? d5, e5. Rook to a4. And once again, Topalov plays a little bit of a less than best move. He captures on f2 instead of supporting his knight. Or he should capture on f2 instead of supporting his knight with f5, which is what he did. Basically, after knight takes f2, king to g3, e4. Apparently. And if king f2, then rook to b2 check. And there's no way to stop the pawn from going to f1 if the king attempts to approach, and the game would have been level. It's a tough haul. He has to be very careful not to go uber ambitious with king to g3, allowing rook to g2 and f1. So, had this happened, king f1 would have sufficed in holding down the fort. So meanwhile, instead of that continuation, Topalov prefers the activity with his pawns. And I really do need some energy. I might need to have to go downstairs for some coffee. Might need to break into my grandson's M&M stash for the most part. Now, this does involve a bit of a pawn sacrifice. And at this moment in time, things are getting very, very sticky for black. So Topalov, in a fit of what's the right word? In a fit of desperation, now has to sacrifice his, or at least has to take the knight and allow this one to approach. So now white has several active pieces where he didn't have any active pieces before. King to g5. h4 check. A relatively key move in this position. If the king had taken on h4, the knight to c5 would have equalized everything into random, invisible. The chances of winning would be very small, if existent at all, for black. And he would have to just pray for a draw. So in this particular case, h4, king f6. Black is down 2 pawns. The pawns are on their way. At long last, Topalov finally gets his knight to the other side of the board. Candidates for white in this position. What can be done? It's quite hard to give up any material, or is it? You're taking a little bit of a risk here, but the reward is great. The winner of this match will become the unified FIDE, and I don't recall Kasparov's organization. I don't think it was PCA at the time. I think it was Pro Chess or GM Chess. The GMA, that's what it was. It's the GMA. So as it turns out, Topalov decides, or Topalov's activity. I was using it this morning actually for a round of Puzzle Survivor. I compared Puzzle Survivor to the Lichess How Are You Logic. I compared Puzzle Survivor to Puzzle Streak this morning. And as far as strength difficulties, it was very clear that Lichess's Puzzle Streak was much more difficult and had a greater variety of themes to draw upon, the way they were allocated anyway. But in general, the interface is a little bit clunkier, unfortunately, on the more expensive end of the spectrum. Needless to say, time is up, and Kramnik chooses to blockade, and is this the end of the game? No, this is not the end of the game. it was the end of the game, because, but Mikhail Marin comments that if rook to b1, white is simply just going to push his pawn. That would be the end of the story, to a certain extent. Ye gods. We need to look at this as black. Now there is one more exercise that we can do in this particular position. And we are going to play through this game. Which is another little bit of a marathon struggle while I go get coffee. This is game number 2, Topalov-Kramnik. No, I never used the that engine is super random. Oh my gosh, I agree with you. I wasn't even sure what you were talking about, but because I try not to use the engine that much, it's rather horrid. Absolutely. Legends, both Rogan and Logic in our Legends as well. We've already given Rogan the shout out earlier. This is game 2 of the match for review. Then after coffee, a quiz. Oops. Spelled it the Swedish way. I did. Facilities. I'll be right back. Facilities, coffee, energy, etc. All right. Good news. I did raid Bubby's M&M supply for a tablespoon of M&Ms. Aye, aye. Kramnik, master defender. So in this manner, I get to take the rook with check. And offer a trade of queens with counterplay. We can already see that there are problems brewing in this particular position. Don't worry, we're going to see this game again. And now the knight is won. I'm going to go back to the first game for just one moment because I didn't request the computer analysis. Should I request the computer analysis now? I don't know. That is a good question. But we are going to quiz ourselves on this particular game now. Kramnik, seriously, with a 2-point advantage in this match, is now full force under suspicion by Topalov that there's no way we can lose to this guy and that he must be getting help in some fashion or another. I believe that at some point in the match, Topalov even wheels in a psychic, or at least attempts to wheel in a psychic to help, which is quite crazy as well. Right? Don't you think that's quite crazy? Shades of in his book, he refers to somebody as the manager. I don't know if this is Silvio Danilov, who is this manager at the time. I have to reread the introduction and be certain of this, but for the most part, To me, the Slav and the semi-Slav are serious fighting defenses. And the moment of truth arrives here on move number 4. What continuation will we choose? Do we choose the semi-Slav, rock-solid defense, or do we choose, as he did in the game, the open Slav? And this is really asking for it to a certain extent. The position is known to be very loose, and the common move in this particular position is knight to e5. However, Kramnik plays a move that he hasn't played in decades, intending it as a surprise, basically a quiet move. We already have talked about, Lauren J.W. mentions that you can win a match just by preventing the opponent's ideas, and this is it at its finest. Of course, we have to find the most active squares for our pieces, and b4 is one of those pieces, one of those squares, just to keep a lockdown on the e4 square. For the first time, white is actually threatening to play e4. So black has to choose whether to fight for the center, hold the center, or give up the center. In this particular example, Kramnik has to choose whether to hold the center, give up the center. I think I might have switched these guys around. I'm so sorry that I am a little lackluster here. Kramnik's toilet. Exactly. Calculation. At my level, it's calculation. Calculation and assessment. I disagree with the opening concept even at my level. Basically, I don't win or lose games, and I've seen a lot of my games where I can get a slightly worse position and win, or I can get a much better position and lose. It's really all about assessing the position properly. And that has to be done through either serious calculation exercises, such as Agart's excelling at calculation, or his Grandmaster preparation calculation, or I just have to be very diligent about doing a certain amount of puzzle streak and or tactics. For example, if I click on my puzzles, I'm at 2460 at the moment, but I've been as low as 2340, and now I'm back to 2460, and I'm quite happy. I haven't had complaints in a while. So, as it turns out, Kramnik decides to give up the center to a degree, hopefully in return for the bishop pair. Opening my window here for the massive amount of light that's coming in. With bishop to g6. And, of course, white takes over the center. Any capture on c3 will be met by e5. Now, a big decision for white, whether to complete the opening with bishop f4 or to grab more space with e5. I'm not even certain that it's possible for us to also consider bringing a rook to d1. Is rook to d1 an option? No. Rook to d1 apparently is not one of the top 5 options. Bishop c2 is, though. In any event, Topalov goes for the most active move, but every time you push a pawn forward, it gives the opponent squares. After knight takes d5, c takes d5, we break the pin on the knight on f3. Black tries to get rid of white's most active bishop. And now a move that I find very difficult to explain. I don't know that I can explain Black's next move. Let's take a look at it for a moment. Black's next move must be a clearance for the knight to go to f8 in order to secure all of the squares on the king side. And now, the moment of truth. Candidates for Black. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure if that's not why Topalov refuses to name him in the book. He calls them, I believe he's referring to him as the manager. Candidates for Black as part of a continuing plan. We do have one Kleenex left. Absolutely. Should be considered. Another move? Uh-oh. B. I'm not sure if that's what he does at the board. Rook to c8 seems pretty reasonable as well. And at the same time, oops, I didn't want to get rid of it. At the same time, Kramnik's choice was bishop takes d3. Ultimately, this objectively seems like the best move. Rook to c8 and knight to f8 had to be considered. h6 could also have been considered. But in this particular position, after these two moves, we're going to go for candidate moves again for Black. In this position, candidate moves again for Black. What can we come up with? Knight f8, yes. That's a little late for h6, obviously. So there are only two moves left that can be at all considered. And I'm positive that Topalov exhausted all of them. I want to know what he says about this particular move. Topalov says that bishop takes d3 was a new move. In all earlier games, instead of bishop to d3, knight f8 and rook to c8 had always been considered or played. The bishop exchange has a strategic idea behind it. And the strategic idea is somewhat revealed here with f5. Yep. The only other move is g6, but white is better after that move. So f5. Basically, he exchanges his white squared bishop, and then he attempts a blockade on the white squares. And Mikhail Marin fully expects a sacrifice on e6 of the knight. And reading Topalov's book, he does not mention it, the possibility of this. But I guess both sides are working within stereotypes. Knight to f8, king to h1. And now black plays the most natural move in the position. As Topalov says, he did not really expect a candidate move for white. Now I'm torn here, logic. Oh no, I experienced Kamsky's father. I knew both of them firsthand. I was at the Marshall Chess Club in 1989 when Kamsky showed up. I also played in the Marshall Chess Club Championship when Kamsky played and won the Marshall Chess Club. He lost the Chess Club Championship. That was his first tournament after the New York Open. And Kamsky also played an exhibition match of 1 or 2 games at the Midtown Library, the famous library on 42nd Street. Yes, I met his father. In fact, we lived in the same neighborhood in near Brighton Beach, Sheepshead Bay. So his father was always nice to me for the most part because I was not a threat. Other grandmasters, on the other hand, he would go ballistic and had very little nice things to say about anybody. For the most part. If it wasn't for his son's benefit, it was really tricky. And as a result, Kamsky and I were on pretty good terms. I think that the statute of limitations is worn out on a story that I often tell where Kamsky is supposed to be running X number of miles every day along the beach and the boardwalk. And I went to at the end of my street, there's a little deli with video games in it, and I would go in there on my way to the subway or on my way back from the subway, and I turned and I saw him on the video game, and he goes, "Don't tell anybody that I was ever here." And obviously he wanted to be youthful and a boy, so he was definitely a normal guy. I did bring it up on one of his streams one time. I said, what about that time in the deli in Sheepshead Bay when you were supposed to be out for a run? And he goes, let's not speak about that one. For the most part. But obviously he's an older man now and he has his own say in things, so I don't think he has anything to be afraid of or fear of. It's just a good story. Oh yeah, no, he also assaulted International Master Victor Frias, and I don't know if Patrick Wolf was a Grandmaster yet, but Patrick Wolf and Victor Frias were laughing nearby. I believe that Patrick Wolf was playing Kamsky, but Victor Frias was showing him a comic book, or had reference to a comic book that is very funny or extremely hysterical, and the two of them were laughing in the corner of the room. And Kamsky went over, I believe, and took a swing at one or the other of them in the tournament hall and got evicted. That was quite something. But in general, I think he was banned after that to a certain extent from being in the playing hall. He was given a good parental treatment to a certain extent. Yeah, those were the days. There were quite a number of young Russian masters in that group. Stanislav Garber, Zuri Zaderman, Boris Kryman. I liked all of them. They were all nice kids for the most part. But Fred Waitskin knew that I had taken some Russian classes, and my Russian is Niemnoga, Очень плохо at best. But the fact that I have used some words, and I was using more sentences then than I do now, led to the awareness that I knew something about Russian. So having me as a tournament director whenever those guys were around. I helped direct the U.S. Junior of around 1991 or 1992 as well, where they were all in there, and Josh Waitzkin's father wanted me to make sure that they weren't speaking about the games while they were speaking. This is before the rule that you couldn't talk during tournaments. Even Perpetual Chess Podcaster, that's all right, even Perpetual Chess Podcaster Ben Johnson revealed among his many podcasts that he took Russian in college just so that he could know if the kids were talking about the games or not, because I think Ben Johnson may or may not be the same age as Josh Waitzkin, as they're all older now. So meanwhile, it is our study session. All the games are already in for us to review. I am hoping to go over all of the decisive games, because usually we only have time to go over 5 or 6 games. But I will put the draws up for computer analysis so that we can have the database here. And we referenced it in the Discord as well. G4 is the move that we were looking for white. Did I not hit candidates? Oops. I did not hit the candidates enter for that one. Let's ignore this one for now. But basically, we were looking for several candidate moves for white, and in his casual assessment by playing the move rook to g8, Topalov had a chance to put his foot on the gas for full aggression here, basically. Absolute and full aggression. Using Topalov notes. Now, Topalov doesn't use an overabundance of exclams here, but he does comment on many of Kramnik's very good moves. Rook to g1. And at this very moment, after rook to c4, rook to g2, f takes g4, gaining a tempo. And now candidates for black in this particular position. Candidates for black. Let's put it up. Candidate moves for black in this particular position. Now, I don't get to talk about those things very often, and I do need to get them in on the stream when I can. I liked Kamsky very much. He was always a nice guy, true professional, very serious about the game, respected everyone. Yeah, trouble is brewing. That much is true. So interestingly enough, with the help of StarKist, I can complement these moves better. Absolutely. Bishop to d8, but Topalov was very impressed with Kramnik's move. And the reason why I mention this is that Kramnik returned to the board from the restroom and quickly played his move, which was not bishop to d8, and it was not king to h8. It was indeed the StarKist favorite, rook to b4. I don't know if you have StarKist tuna in Canada, but StarKist is one of those brands that has at times been controversial over the handling of dolphins in tuna. And then they had to have the dolphin safe tuna brand, prove that they're dolphin safe. Now, it's funny that Topalov mentions this particular move. Like, he returns from the restroom and immediately makes this move. And obviously we can begin to understand that he is a little bit unsettled. Again, candidate moves for black in this position. I don't know if Kramnik goes back to the restroom, but in these positions he needs to make a series of only moves. I don't know how strong the computers were in those days. Well, it's actually quite logical. Knowing what you have to do, and knowing that you are defending, for the most part. He plays the immediate queen to b5 in this position, while all other moves could lead to trouble on the king side. And Topalov even comments that he considered sacrificing his queen in this position with he looked at h takes g6 for a good portion of the time, and he could not make it work. But after h takes g6, queen takes d3, g takes h7, double check, king to h7, rook to g7, check, king h6. The bishop on e3 is under attack, and he has no useful discoveries because the bishop can just be captured. So queen to b5 is a very forceful move that attempts to exchange off all of the attackers. Topalov immediately understands that he has to keep the queens on the board. And after rook takes b2, it is in this position that he chooses to sacrifice the queen. Yep, it is in this position that he chooses to sacrifice the queen, and Kramnik refuses the queen. And once again finds the only move, h5, to keep the lines closed. Once again finds the only move to keep the lines closed. So after h5, g7, just want to make sure that I don't miss out on a move here. Yeah, Kramnik actually played a little bit of a blunder here. I actually thought the king to f8 would be better as well. But it's a tough call. It's a very, very, very tough call as to whether or not bishop takes f8 can be punished. And Topalov doesn't come up with the most logical move in this position. Topalov should play rook takes g4, but instead plays queen to g6 check and allows the opponent to escape to a good degree. I guess he wasn't really ready to sacrifice his queen completely. Oh no, it's all right. The video on demand will be up later. You can, and in fact, when you stop watching here, what I've noticed is when I go back to a streamer that I subscribe to, the video usually picks up right where I stopped watching, even if they were live and now I'm watching after the fact. It just, if you go to any streamer that you subscribe to and watch the video on demand and you were watching them before, it'll go right to the spot where you were most of the time. I don't know if that's as long as you go within the browser that you were on before, or if the Twitch app keeps track in a cookie. But in general, after the move f5, have a great afternoon. There you go. Rogan is the man, as usual. So, candidate moves for black. I really did appreciate logic. Making those candidate moves, making those suggestions, contributing immensely. So what to do in this particular position after all? I mean, white is down in exchange at the moment. The knight on f3 cannot be taken. Queen e7 does seem like the most logical move in the position. Or I should say queen to d7, anyway. Certainly that's the second best move in the position. The reason why I was quizzing on this, because the best move in the position is rook to e7. Insane. Rook to e7, which is quite crazy, allowing f6, of course. And now, of course, the follow-up, the move that you had to see that may or may not create the counterplay that you need. Candidates for black. Yeah. No, the idea is just to try. And you will find, you will succeed. If you try, you will succeed. And the winner is, hopefully that sound is neither too loud nor too annoying. Queen e8, queen e2, g3. Absolutely. He does choose queen e2. Very good, Rogan. Both of you have that common denominator. He does choose queen e2 because he's taking the knight with check. Topalov has to retreat the queen, capture, batten down the hatches. Obviously, he can capture that rook at any time, and that'll be the threat of mate. So, white to move. Now, it's going to be a little harder here. I'm not going to flip the board because we're looking at it from Kramnik's side. I'm not going to flip the board, but it's candidates for white. What should Topalov do to continue the attack in this position? That is the question. Reasonable. Dimple, reasonable. Don't be afraid to just let go. So, very good. Bishop c1 saves the bishop, attacks the rook. Bishop h6, as pointed out by Dimpool. And interestingly enough, White had only one move. I repeat, only one move to continue in this position with an advantage. And that one move was Queen h5. He chose Rook to c1, unfortunately, which is not quite fast enough. But getting back to your other suggestions, Bishop h6, of course, is also equal, as White has no threats, and Starkist just gives Rook to b3 on Bishop h6. I mean, I imagine that if the bishop's not here, the only thing that you need to see is that you're taking the knight with check. Bishop h6, Rook to b3, you're taking the knight with check, and the knight is pinned to the queen. We can't exchange pieces. So that was all very good. Dimpool, how are you? Were you streaming earlier, Dimpool? I did take a break briefly between streams. And I'm hoping to do another one this evening, but I am quite pooped. I don't know if I have the energy for a 6-hour stream again this evening. This could be tricky. So needless to say, he plays Rook to c1, and now his advantage has dissipated. If he's lucky, he will be able to draw this game. If he's lucky. Because Kramnik just shuts down that rook. And here's where I came back at whatever moment. And I noted that he was taking the rook with check. And that black was an exchange up, or an exchange for two pawns anyway. I don't entirely know what's going on with Topalov here in this particular position. Candidates for White. As I catch up by reading. I did read through the book before, but there's so much to read and so many interesting points in this book. It's quite a lovely book to add to my World Championship repertoire. Any book written by a world champion such as this one should be digested carefully. There are enough diagrams for everything. Very good. Queen takes e4, absolutely. Now, I had shown this game on a previous break here. Topalov actually chose bishop f4, which deserves a question mark. He absolutely had to consider exchanging and playing knight to g5 to go after the rook. Certainly getting two pieces for the rook and a massive pawns in the center. So basically after, let me just take a quick peek here. After rook to d7, f takes g7. Rook takes g7. The e6 pawn is also hard to hold. I've got two different bots providing two different What an absolute potser. I know, right? I mean, dude, you are in trouble here, but I would put Topalov into the attacking category that he is such a dynamic player that his queen is worth more than his opponent's queen. I do this with kids too. Like, the reason why kids don't want to trade queens is because they think they'll never have a queen ever again in their lives. Therefore, they don't want to give it up. Even if they get a rook and a bishop, a queen and a bishop for their queen, if they get 12 points for their queen, they still won't trade queens because they don't want to. So after taking, what about bishop h6 after? Oh, okay, let's take a look at that. So the idea is knight to e8 and knight to, all the pawns are going to go. Or they're not going to go, one way or the other. So basically, we capture and then tag everything on this side of the board. So if he does play a move like that, we can consider gaining time on the other side of the board. And this should lead to a draw. That's a good question. What happens on this? But it's not quite enough. I would probably play, yeah, queen at g5 and see what he does. Let's see. I still have it up. Bishop f4 is the second best move in the position. The only problem with queen to g5 is that black just starts running his pawns. So if there's no attack on the king side, like, we can't take the bishop because the rook takes g7. We especially can't take the bishop because the queen takes f3 check. So playing the move bishop to f4, ye gods. Let's see what he says in his own words. Queen takes e4, d takes e4, knight to g5 was much better. But as I said, I have the erroneous belief that Kramnik did not play queen f5 because a queen takes f5, e takes f5, bishop g5. And therefore did not believe that he would play it again. And no matter what the evaluation of this position, Topalov says, black has already achieved a moral victory. Matters will be decided in the end game as opposed to the middle game, and this fact irritated me greatly. Combined with a wrong evaluation of the position, this resulted in several mistakes in the endgame phase. Queen takes g5, e takes, he doesn't comment, therefore I'm not going to. Black is better, but the ending is still complicated, and psychologically for black, the white passed pawns are annoying. With this move, bishop to f8, Kramnik tried to reach a simple ending with an exchange up. e6. And after rook to c7, of course, which tags the bishop, bishop gives itself up, And is there a way out? Rook to c1. White's chance consists of exchanging his e and f pawns for the bishop and then trying to eliminate black's b pawn. Knight to g5, rook to f1, e7. Yep. As it turns out, knight to e6 check. He misses a study-like draw, he says. I just want to prove that with the original Starkist. Right? So as it turns out, knight to e6 check was a mistake, and he should have just played king to d7. After king to d7, b5, now knight e6 check, king f7, knight d8 check, king f6, knight to c6, and you can see how these form a wall against the king. And it would have been a study-like draw. Not a study-like win for white, but a study-like draw. So this check, unfortunately, whizzes away the whole match. Rook to h1, a key move. Yep, and in this particular position, there's just nothing you can do in this position to keep the game alive. All right. Sorry while I take a brief moment here. As written. How are you? Are you streaming, sir? Timberborn? That's awesome. I try to, as I was telling earlier in another stream, I try to follow everyone who follows me. That's a lot of followers, obviously. But I follow all 1,300 that follow me, and interestingly enough, oops. How can I have some semblance of thinking through Blitz, but not go over a game in under 15 minutes? All 1,300. It is tough. It is very tough. Now, interestingly enough, we're gonna go through the draws as well. Maybe not as deeply, but once again, Kramnik is on the white side. And as in game one, he chooses the Catalan, open Catalan. Now this time we get to see the knight c6 move that we were talking about in the first game. Trailing now 0-2 in the match, the situation was different. The variations I would normally play were not good for this game. In the free day after game 2, I told my seconds to find something in the Catalan where black also has chances for a win, and they came up with an idea. Kramnik had also played such a move against Knightish at Dortmund. C5, fighting for the center. Bishop C6, fighting against the fianchettoed bishop. Wing pawn destroying a center pawn. And here, bishop takes G2. Once again, Kramnik is the master of in-between moves. The master of in-between moves. He plays queen to b5 check. And like several pieces are in the lurch here, the king, the bishop on c5, the bishop on g2, but black is a piece up, so he has a little bit more leeway. Knight to d7, king takes g2, a6, queen to d3. Rook to c8, and black is playing with fire, Topalov says. I was happy to have the queen still on the board, but for the moment black has development problems. So, bishop g5, bishop e7. Yep. Queen takes e7. Oh, let's hide the notation here for a moment. Just so that we don't have... Do I have any more on Gata and his father? Well, there was one instance in the Olympiad when normally when someone is playing badly, and Gata was playing badly in the Olympiad the 1 year, and I believe they actually finished in first, or maybe it was the previous year that they finished in first place together as a team. Joel Benjamin told me this. I wasn't at the Olympiad, but Grandmaster Joel Benjamin mentioned that John Donaldson wanted to rest Gata because he wasn't doing so well, and Gata Kemsky's father barged in at whatever moment and basically let the coach, John Donaldson, have it and said, Gata must play. He will play through this. He will have his form back. Oh no, I hope your plumbing is okay. There you go. Just set a schedule and make it a part of your week, like Crescentine. I don't know if you caught Crescentine the other day, but she is and does some chess I didn't get to see. Let me just make sure of what she was doing the other day. I apologize to everybody. Oh. Yeah, she does once a week streaming, and she does very well with it, and she just made partner. And she plays FIDE rated games on the weekends. Bishop g5. I didn't start it here, though. Rook on a to c1. Knight a4. Nice discovery on this. Reinforce it. Anchor that piece. Drive the piece away. an exchange of knights with the help of a discovery along the battery here. Rooks to the 7th. Battening down the hatch, just keeping everything protected. It's a nice anchoring move. Wow. And a perpetual check. Very well done. Very well done. Trying to get his name back on the board. Now he's no longer 0 and 2. He's half 2.5. Kramnik is black in this game. I am very torn as to which color we should be. So let's see. This one just happens to be a very fighting draw. And after the move c6, knight c3, knight f6, Topalov decides to play the move e3. And then we end up going into the semi-Slav, which Sam Shankland has a lifetime opening repertoire on. And a b to d7, bishop d3, and the common knowledge is that you make the bishop move twice while attacking it, and now we have a choice of playing bishop to b7 or anchoring our b5 pawn so that we can play c5 later. He chose bishop to b7, and after a3, b4, black manages to achieve some form of space on the king side. And now Topalov actually attempts to sacrifice a pawn, ruling that he wasn't going to be with him anymore. He could not accompany him to the Olympiad or any other site. They basically pulled his privileges. Another one, which was covered in Chess Chow. Chow is the distributor for with Joel Benjamin and Mark Ginsberg. Another really great story with Gadakovsky was the Jacksonville 1990 U.S. Championship. They did not have a trophy to take home, but Joel Benjamin, I remember, had played the exchange variation against Gadakovsky, and it was a knockout tournament. Oh yeah? I'm not sure if I know this one. That's recent though, right? But Gadakovsky won the tournament and then complained that he only got a check and he didn't get a trophy. So John Fedorowicz wrote on a napkin, "Congratulations," on a Heineken bottle, and took it over to him and goes, "Here's your trophy. Congratulations." And that bottle appeared on the cover of Chess, or in the, I don't know if it was on the cover of Chess Chow magazine for that particular period of time, or if it was just inside the magazine. But there is a picture of that trophy, Gadakovsky's trophy for the 1990. It was basically a Heineken bottle with a congratulations on a napkin welded to the side of the bottle. Yeah, those are the days. I also played Gadakovsky once, and he destroyed me. I actually played a Kali Zukertort against him. I played very passively to a certain extent, and he gave me a nice compliment after the game. He goes, "You don't normally play like that. What happened? Why didn't you play like you usually do?" Because he saw me draw with Roman Chijashvili, and I played very actively and very aggressively. And I basically thought, I don't know why I played passively against you. It was very weird. It was like I was a deer in headlights. Same thing when I played Judith Polgar. I remember I was white, and it was a Con Sicilian, or Paulson Sicilian, however you look at it, with the e6 and a6, and she basically destroyed me. I was down 2 pawns by move 16. I don't even know how it happened. It was so brutal. But it does happen. In any event, another very active move. So let's just do some damage control here. Black has 6 pawns, white has 5 pawns. I'm going to skip ahead to game 4 here. I mean, there's so much information after game 4 through game 5 that it's completely ridiculous. It's absolutely an outrage. The psychic, the finding of a hotel for the psychic. They chose a hotel. There is a 4-star hotel, a 5-star hotel apparently in Ilista, and it doesn't look like a 5-star hotel on the outside, but it looks very good on the inside. They were sold out. Topalov believes that, and basically, yeah, Gatto paid me a compliment, just in case I get the rumor that I didn't finish that anecdote either. But yeah, Gatto was very kind to me in that particular analysis because he had seen me play well in other games. So where is rook a5? I just wanted to see the comment on rook a5. Rook on a to a5. Is that true? That's not the point. Rook to a5. The position I had in mind before bishop f3. Before he played bishop to f3, he actually saw this. So queen to c7, bishop to f3. No worries. I'm glad you prodded me for them because it's nice to get them out on stream. Black is a pawn up. The queenside pawns are, but Black's queenside pawns are weak, and the bishop b7 is passive, and the miss h pawn seems not to be so important. And now, rook to a5. Played this move almost immediately. I'm always looking out for if there are more bathroom comments. c5, rook takes c5, knight e4. And here my opponent offered a draw, the second surprise in only 2 moves. After the game, he said the position was dead even, so he did not want to waste time, as he wanted to watch a Champions League soccer match. This is Topalov's words. According to Braev's evaluation, white has a pleasant advantage. And this is also the opinion of all of the computer programs. And white does have a pleasant advantage, yes. Uh-oh. What's going on here? Let's see, I'm streaming. So what's up, Angel?
Hey, could you come a little later
Yes.
than 2? Okay, yeah, because I have more than an hour's worth of work left, so
Okay. I didn't even realize that it was 1:23 already.
Yeah, I know, it went so fast. And of course, today, instead of Anakin's second meeting with his teachers being at 1 o'clock, it was at 12 o'clock. So it was just like,
Oh, you mean you left and took him to his teachers?
No, he has online.
Oh, he had an online conference, parent-teacher conference.
Yeah, so they meet at in the morning at 10 o'clock, and then they've been doing it at 1, but today it was at 12.
Right. I got a text message, I think, from Miss B.
Is B done?
I think so.
About what?
I don't know. There was a lot of phone numbers in there. It was definitely from her. I'll show it to you later.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
All right. I don't know why
Yeah,
they had my number. Anyway,
yeah,
I'm
I don't know.
streaming. I'll come about 2:15, 2:30.
I'll give you a call when I'm wrapping up.
All
Because
right.
it only takes a few minutes for you to get here, but
All
it'll
right.
definitely be after 2:20.
All right. Thanks, Angel. Bye.
Okay, thanks, Dad. Bye.
So meanwhile, yeah, I do have a lot of stories, and the problem is that I need somebody like Logic to ask me the questions so that I can unlock the story. When I'm just sitting around, I can't remember anything, right? Ham Zero, how are you? So the Gadakovsky stories are relatively, those are the good old days. Absolutely. So after bishop takes e4, bishop takes e4. I would normally ask for white to move, but in this particular case, white is seeking activity with queen to g4. And now candidate moves for black. Why not? Candidate moves for black. I'm not sure if that's blocking the notation on the board. Does anybody really need to see the notation on the board? I move this thing over so that it's right there. So it's right in the, oh no, it's always going to expand on that side. Got it. Mm-hmm. All right. I like Ezra's suggestions. In fact, if he was trying to match wits with Topalov, he got it. I mean, Topalov did play bishop to d3, but he thought this was dubious. A very dangerous decision, he says. Topalov thinks that Kramnik should keep his bishop on the b1 h7 diagonal and keep it anchored with bishop to d5 first. But overall, let me just proof it just for a moment. So in this particular position, yeah, bishop d5 and bishop d3 are roughly 50-50 in general. And f5, by the way, Ezra, is certainly a suggestion. I'm not so certain about bishop to c2 because there are other ways of taking advantage of this position. For example, if bishop to c2, knight to e5, bishop takes b3, knight to c6 wins the exchange by forking the two pieces. And that could be awkward. Is bishop to c2? No, not in the top 5 or 6 moves. But it does choose this aggressive move, perhaps to force the exchanges. And, to each their own. After rook to a1, black is even willing to give up the rook to keep up the pressure on the center. Attacking and defending at the same time. Pressure. Pressure. And he's off the back rank, free from some checks. Doesn't have to worry about that anymore. So after knight to c4, bishop to e4, bishop to d5, doubling rooks, f5, and now black goes on the aggressive here, threatening possibly a perpetual check. This game did end up in a draw, so unfortunately I'm going to once again, we're threatening everything on the back rank. And the players agreed to a draw. Next up, game 5. So, with all of the rigmarole around the match, Kramnik is up 2 points and chooses not to show up for game 5 in protest around Kramnik's restroom. He's got a couch, he's got several pieces of furniture and a coffee table. It's quite lovely. Absolutely nothing wrong. If the claimant thought the 3-1 lead would guarantee him a rest day, then he didn't know Silvio Danilov very well. The manager never leaves his business unfinished. Everything started on Thursday morning. The manager came down for breakfast at 8 o'clock. I could tell he had a plan of action in his head already. The general and the psychic had finished their analysis of the claimant's behavior backstage. An hour later, the letter signed in blood declaring war that unfolded over the next few days was out of the printer. And they have the time slots. Kramnik plays move 15 at 3:54. 3:55 p.m. Kramnik goes into the bathroom. 3:56 Kramnik goes out of the bathroom. 3:57 Kramnik goes into the bathroom. 3:59 Kramnik goes into or out of the bathroom at that moment. 4:03 Kramnik goes into the bathroom. They're watching the tapes of the restroom, the video of the restroom. And at 16:04 he leaves the bathroom, and then at 16:07 he comes out for move 16. So in general, it was quite impressive that they did get the videotapes of the players' behavior in the restroom. And there's one particular move. What game was this that they were analyzing? I mean, there was one where if he makes exact moves all the time, that's fine. But it's pretty incredible. Director of the Appeals Committee. There are a lot of letters here in Topalov's book, and he tries to clarify everything. Open letter to FIDE President. Dear Mr. President, take a walk with me. And then, of course, there are letters back between Kirzan and Illusionov and everything, and they can't prove, of course, that anything happened in the bathroom. But there were cables, internet cables, above Kramnik's toilet, and I don't know how well you can see this picture. The picture quality in this is quite poor in this book, basically. So they have a stepladder in Kramnik's bathroom examining the internet cables that are available in the sealer. And then a close-up of them removing the internet cables that are in Kramnik's bathroom. I mean, it's quite brutal in a way. I don't know that there's not a picture of Kramnik's actual toilet in here, or if that was in another post, and I just recall it for the most part. But here's a picture of what Kramnik's rest area looked like with from the video camera that they extracted or detailed the analysis of him going into the bathroom and coming out of the bathroom and going into the bathroom. Over a 10-minute period, he went into the bathroom for several moves at various moments. And if anybody wants me to read that time again, that he went into the bathroom and vice versa, or came out of the bathroom, that's entirely possible. They didn't have so much documentation, but it does look suspicious if you're going into the bathroom. One thing, I know it takes me an average of 2 to 3 minutes. This championship was held in Elista, the capital of Kalmykia. And the capital of Kalmykia and Elista were, for the most part, the hometown of the former FIDE director of CEO or overall head, Kirzan Iluzhinov. I should pronounce it properly for the stream. I call him Iluzhinov as though there were a lot of illusions as to whether or not his money or the FIDE money was his money, or if he just kept the FIDE money. So yeah, he's got a computer monitor, fax machine, telephone, everything. I'll give that one more go for the camera, just because it was absolutely hysterical, right? I couldn't find this in any other way, but that's a very comfy looking toilet. And another cartoon featured in perhaps one of the major newspapers. Kramnik with a toilet for a seat at the World Championship table across from Topalov's chair. So you got the toilet seat on this side, which is quite brutal. In any event, we are going to continue as time is somewhat limited. The 5th game was forfeited, of course. I don't think I can do a computer analysis on that one, but I will do it on this one as we go through it. The draws, anyway. We are going to do it from Kramnik's point of view, now that I'm reminded. So this is the Slav defense. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this opening. It is a little loose for my taste. 95 is the best move. So Kramnik hadn't really played this opening for quite some time, and it was intended to be a surprise. So Topalov took a little time off in his previous encounter with this opener. Lack of I can't even imagine what Zalakai is going to come up with for my toilet image when I'm in the bathroom. I'm going to have my camera replaced with the Kramnik toilet for the most part. The one that Zalakai uses needs a little bit of cleaning. I don't think I can put it... Turn down for what? Turn down for what? That was amazing, Pegasus. That was amazing. You woke me up. I don't know if anybody saw me, but literally, I think that one might need to be raised in price just so that I don't have to hear it again. That was pretty brutal. Quadraspassky, how are you, bud? I didn't look to see how many subscriptions, how many subs we need to reach our next emote level to add more emotes, but there are a lot of unused emotes to Quadraspassky. Where's the Bit soundtrack score sheet? I believe that it's in the I believe that it's in the rewards and challenges area, but I'm not sure. Oh, I wanted to put on another one. I wanted to put up a reward, but I wasn't sure how much to make it to do the shades on stream. Not unlike the hat that comes on and off, we can do the shades on stream. This completes the picture to a certain extent. And so tired after the gym indeed. So this F3 line is extremely exciting, by the way. The F3 line is extremely exciting. They are flexible. Exactly. You know, Joel, Princeton can use a guy like you. If anybody can name the movie. I was inspired by the glasses as well. Quadraspassky. And they really repeated this line. Topalov repeated this line as white against Vichy and Non. I'm actually kind of curious as to what the novelty is. Right? Bishop takes c4, a6. Oh. So, Anand attempted rook to c8 in this position. Instead of a6. Kramnik's a6. The tried and true. And then we also have Kramnik playing what? Aronian Kramnik. Let's turn off this thing so I can see it. So yeah, after a6, instead of king e2, Aronian actually played h4. So let's see if we have any comments by Topalov on this particular setup. Rook to c8 instead of a6 gives white the possibility of bishop to b5. So let's take a look at that. So in this particular position, after bishop to b4, rook to c8 gives white the possibility of bishop to b5, which is true. Anand allowed this to happen, did not have anything up, and black lost. So a6, king e2, and he also mentions Topalov. Here and on the next move, I considered h4. As Aronian played in his games against Kramnik, first at Wyconsay 2007 and later in their rapid match in Yerevan. So it happened twice. And in this particular position, after rook to c1, Kramnik played rook to g8, one move, and he played bishop to c5, another move. New York Agent Smith, exactly. I prefer risky business. Princeton can use a guy like you, Joel. Oh, I'm not going through the proper game. The proper game went king e2 instead of h4, which is uber aggressive. Rook to g8 in order to be able to move this bishop without weakening the kingside pawns. After all, the e6 pawn falls. I am looking for any moment that we can cover up for a quiz question. Now, is this a potential quiz question? That's the question. New York Agent Smith. Exactly. I don't know. I think that joke was out there. The truth is out there. So let's see. What game am I up to here? Is this game 6? It is game 6. I just wanted to check this line. Yes, black to move. Candidates for black. Candidate moves for black in this position. Mainly because Yevgeny Bareyev was impressed with this move. And even Starkist is impressed with this move. Oh yes. We'll let the lawyers decide. I don't know. He's in a neutral country like Sweden. I don't think they can be sued there. Where is it here? Yes. There are 2 moves worth considering, possibly 3, and the winner is nothing on the part of, oh, there we go. Poker Ram. Good try. I like that you've got that first answer in there. Unfortunately, don't give away the rook. Bishop to e8 deserves mention. And the stronger player often gets the rooks to the right squares faster and better than the opponent. And Yevgeny Bareyev felt that this move deserved an exclamation mark, which I'll award it, because it is the only move that holds equality according to Starkist. Starkist 14 neural network engine. Canned tuna. Canned silicone tuna. Bishop to e8, by the way, is the second best move in the position to try to relocate the bishop to a better square, absolutely. So after bishop to e8, hold on, I think it's in this book. Bishop to e8, rook on a to d1, bishop c6, rook to d4, with the threat of bishop takes e6. Is preferable for white. Would grant white the initiative, but after rook to c6, black now equalizes. h4, rook on g to c8, g4, bishop c5, rook on a to d1. Of course, they gave this move an exclamation mark, but I think it's forced. Bishop takes b6, rook to d7, check. And then another fork. And then another equalization. Did the players agree to a draw here? Yes, they did. And dear Mr. President, take a walk with me. So where are we? We're on game number 8, I believe. Or is it game number 7? I'll know in a moment. So is this game number 7? No, we already looked at game number 7. Or did I miss game number 7? But needless to say, our time is limited, and I do want to do all the decisive games. Mm-hmm. Oops. 1 second. Let me see if I can undo what I just did. All right, that's better. So meanwhile, this is the standard line of the semi-Slav that we had talked about before, where black can play the semi-Slav. Once the bishop moves, we capture, we play b5, and in this particular instance, the bishop goes to b7, while a6 is also an option. What was that? While a6 is also an option. And Mikhail Marin's comment is, during the last 3 games, Kramnik has managed to convince his opponent that the Slav is not such a bad opening after all. Hold on. I don't want to miss it. I don't want to miss a beat. Game 7. Yes. All well and good. Really exciting moves. 2 pieces for a rook. Making sure of this. I don't want to miss it. My apologies. 1 secundo. And now preventing black from castling. A multi-purpose move. F5 was multi-purpose to stop e4 from driving the knight out of the center, as well as getting the king castled by hand. Candidates for white. Do I have any more stories from chess tournaments? I have so many stories, it's crazy. For me to narrow it down to just one is another story. Candidates for white. I mean, I'm really thinking about featuring the games of really good players for the most part. I will retell the story of winning Foxwoods, which is a casino north of New York City, about an hour and a half. There are two Indian reservation casinos north of New York City, the Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods. Foxwoods used to hold an Easter tournament every year, and one year I did win it under 2,200. I will continue this story later as we rejoin our game in progress. Rook on A to C1. Bishop E7. Now I knew when I was asking this, and you already knew when I was asking this, that I was going to be concentrating on the rooks, because this is the forgotten rook. In fact, all of your candidate moves could have been about this rook for the most part. Rook to C1 and rook to D1. He does play rook on A to D1. And the other move that you suggested, bishop takes E7, should have and probably could have been in there with the help of this exact thing. So rook on A to D1, king F7. Just making sure that I don't miss a beat. I was actually not rook on A to D1, it was just rook to D1. And now, of course, candidates for white. So I can continue the story. So at a previous World Open, a young protege of ours won the under 2,200 section. I think he pocketed $12,000. He pocketed a lot more money than I did. And I don't think that he did anything generous for his friends at the end of that event. But on the other hand, I planned on making up for it since, and I will show one or two of the games from the Foxwoods event in the Pegasus request. Pegasus gifted 5 subs and asked for a several-hour stream on my best game. So I'm definitely going to be showing 2 games from the Foxwoods event. Possibly 3, but 2 games from the Foxwoods event were key. One was a draw with Perpetual Chess podcast host. So yeah, I plan on making up for the act of generosity toward friends. And basically, I took Ben Feingold, Grandmaster Joel Benjamin. I don't know if Larry Christensen was there, but I think Larry Christensen was there as well. Grandmaster Larry Christensen, Natasha, his wife, many other people were in that crowd. I'm drawing a blank at the moment. But yeah, absolutely. One more time for the rooks. Rook to C7 was played. And of course, black does have to batten down the hatches just a wee bit. So here we go. And speaking of moves that Topalov did not play, while we're at it, speaking of moves that Topalov did not play, we're looking at this one. Not that there's a huge difference in the potential, but there is a Grandmaster opinion here. So basically, I took about 14 people out to dinner after I won Foxwoods. And Ben Feingold refused to let me foot the entire bill, including the tip. He just wanted to know how much it was, and the rest of the table, he basically gathered all the money from everybody to tip the servers. So he gathered the 15 to 20 or 25% to tip the servers from everybody who was at the dinner table. And I had planned on taking care of all of my friends there, and Ben Feingold was very happy about that. I think he might have even been with a previous wife who was there with him at the time. But he was a very good friend and refused to let me pay absolutely everything. It was very kind of it. At the old Adams Mark Hotel, the World Open dollar store, I think, a General Dollar or a Target. I think it used to be Centerline Avenue in Philadelphia. I'm trying to think of the area. God, I can't even think of the area that it's called. But the World Open for about a decade was in that area. Yes, Pegasus. Unfortunately, Topalov only played rook to c6. Very primitively threatening takes, but rook on c to c7 was the better move by a hair. Now these hairs, we're splitting hairs, of course, but hairs do make a difference. And it would have stopped the knight from relocating itself to the center. And as Mikhail Marin says, both sides have put their pieces on the most active possible squares. Just going to make sure I don't miss a beat here. Mikhail Marin is, I have to rely on Topalov's notes. Basically, Kramnik has more active rooks, but it's a rook versus two minor pieces, which is a game that I will have come up in my thought. Kramnik is playing white. I'm always looking at it from Kramnik's side of the board. Believe it or not. Rook on c to c7 was correct. That was the right move, and he played rook to c6. Kramnik played rook to c6. Sorry, I apologize. I said Topalov. Obviously, I am delusional. I just want to make sure of where I am. All right. Finally. Are we there yet? And Topalov finally rids himself of the pin. And he also has knight to d5 if needed, if he gets checked. The rook enters into play at last, according to Topalov. Now my pieces completely dominate the position. Oh, Topalov won this game, right? My apologies. Pegasus, I just realized, now this actually almost forms a mating net. Yep. That was the end of the world as we know it. Now this was a tied match for the most part. Topalov made a great comeback. But I do believe we should see it from the winner's side of each game. So I apologize. I do apologize. Did I request analysis on the previous one? I did not. It doesn't look like it. They have the press conference schedule here. So game number 9, if we're not at all... I have met Kramnik. The first time I met Kramnik was on 58th Street and 6th Avenue. It was during the Days and Nights of New York. I don't really want to take the poster down off the wall, but I will switch the camera for just one moment. If I can. I think I have it under backgrounds. Office cam. And all I have to do is minimize this. That way I can borrow the office cam. So yeah, the Days and Nights of New York event, which was held over here. I don't know if you can see this event very well, but this was the event. It was June 7th, 17th in Trump Tower. You had the Intel World Chess Championships quarterfinals, and that poster is right there. Hopefully you can see it okay. I'm in the center of the poster with Kramnik short. Kamsky, of course, is playing Kramnik. Nigel Short is playing Romanician? Can't remember. Golko. Sorry, Nigel Short is playing Golko. Tiviakov is playing Michael Adams. Romanician is playing Anand. And there are those 8 finalists. And then over here we also have June 11th, the Winter Garden, June 20th, and the PC Expo at the Jacob Javits. Basically, they made this nice poster of this event. I can't quite pull back enough with this camera because of the way I have it wired. But in general, it was a great event. And hold on here, if I could restore my camera to its original posting so that we can see the rest of the room. There we go. I think. More this one. Yeah, basically, he was in town during that event. That was when I met him first, through Anahan, and he was still smoking at that point. He hadn't quit smoking, I don't think, in 93 or 94. But he did eventually choose to stop smoking. And he got his health in order, and then he rampaged upon, I think it was losing to Shirov that really got him, for the most part. It was losing to Shirov. I do have a relatively cozy nook. We got the 4 bookcases on these sides, and then the camera's sitting on one of the 2 bookcases over there, above the trophy. picture of my daughter, master's certificate on the thing, and then the camera's like on the second shelf. It took me a while to figure out where I could put it, but I had to put it far enough away that it could be seen. So meanwhile, yeah, I'm lucky. Lucky in many ways. Where were we? Did I evaluate this already? I did. So this is game 9. And Topalov wins this one as well. So now, counting the forfeit, he's won 3 games in the match, and he actually goes ahead quite well in this match. And it's really like thrilling because Kramnik forfeited that game. Everything is on edge. So after knight takes g6, a takes g6, a3, knight d7. G3. Topalov played a new move in this particular position. Okay, good. I was worried for a moment. But d takes c4, bishop takes c4. I'm not a huge fan of these weak white squares on this side of the board, but I don't necessarily know how weak they are. And now the bishop returns to cover all the white squares. Kramnik plays queen to b6, which is an awkward move. This is a move played by many young players. Followed by another move that looks like it should be taking advantage of a pin. However, after bishop to e3, rook on a to d8, knight a4 is what he was planning all along to ease the tension of the pin. Queen to c2, e takes f4, g takes f, bishop takes f4, queen to b7. Rook on a to c1 was also strong. And really, are they both playing not to lose chess? I just need to see something here. There's got to be more to it than this. So this game was the first time Kramnik had played a different opening. He altered his Slav and semi-Slav structure, so he wasn't playing that any longer. So after bishop to g5, bishop e7, king h1, knight h7, bishop e3. And of course, if he trades pieces, having more space would have eased black's problems. All right. But you see the digital chess clock? Yeah, that one doesn't work. As it turns out, I was trying to repair it. I had taken it apart. It's actually a clock that I shared with my daughter Jessica for many tournaments, and I have a little bit of sentimental value to it. So I was trying to save it, but in the long run, I think I'm going to jettison it. It's a DGT Chronos. And anything else? Oh yeah, the Windex doesn't need to be on that shelf. It was below the clock. But aside from that, candidate moves for white. How am I doing on time? Oh no, 2:15. I'm actually running out of time. As I have to go pick up my daughter, and the main part of this match comes to a close. Taxi driver, exactly. Gotta go pick up my daughter. It's a normal thing, right? It's tragic. But I have enjoyed this. I am going to be reading the rest of this book. On the Edge in a lista. I don't know if the name of this particular chapter is about the blonde and the brunette. So I'm not entirely sure what that means, because I haven't gotten to this stage of the book reading about the match yet. Well, it's too bad Apostolette is not here. That's all I'm going to say. H4. And after bishop to E7, E5. And after a little bit of regrouping by black, some regrouping by white. What could white have done better there? White had knight to E4 there. That would have been better. Not going to check the computer analysis. I just want to use their notes as well. So after this move, knight to E4 would have probably been better. Queen to G2 was not better to this one. Solid pawn structure. The doubling of rooks. Hold the phone. Just want to make sure there's nothing else that I can't quiz on. And then candidates for white. I've left you in a state of disrepair? What's up, Quadraspassky? Hold on, did I miss a... How did I leave you in a state of disrepair? Taxi driver. I'm just winning too much? What do you mean I'm winning too much? I haven't been winning at all. I beat Ron. I beat Jeff Yeatenheimers. I drew with Conta de Luna, but I lost to all the schlubs. I lost to an 1800. I lost to a... I might have even lost to a 1500 if you look at my record. I lost to a 1500 last weekend. This is in the slow chess too. I literally just hung my queen. He's got a bishop on G5. He's got a bishop on G5, and I moved my knight off of F6, and he plays bishop takes D8 in a Nimzo Indian. All right. And the winner for white is... Rook takes F7. And black cannot recapture. Basically, black cannot recapture. If black attempts to recapture, it's lights out for the queen. So rook takes f7. He cannot recapture. Knight to d5 and rook on 7 to f3. And already we can see that white has a significantly decisive advantage. So in the 10th game, so I'm going to get my server side analysis here. I'm not winning too much. No, lately, I mean, my blitz rating is below 2,200 because I've lost so much. It was like up there. I'm losing. Yes, there you go. Possibly. I'm expecting my daughter to call at any moment. Even if she doesn't call, I want to be able to be on my way. So this is the last game. Possibly. I'm going with this one. Now Kramnik returns to, or is allowed to return to. Remember I talked about holding the center versus giving up the center versus closing? Like holding the center, attacking the center, and giving up the center. Bishop e7 also keeps the center closed. Bishop d2, he does choose a form of the closed. Worrying news out of Ukraine. Yeah, maybe. Bishop g2. I'm going to try to hide this. So after queen to c2, a5, rook to d1, knight h5, bishop c1. This is a very common idea. b5, c takes d5 happened to be a new move. The idea is that if c5, then f5 is equal. However, c takes d5 was Kramnik's aggression. e4, rook to b8, bishop f4, knight e5, and candidates for white. Yes, candidates for white. I need to catch up in a book about Topalov's games. Just a moment. Yes, I did stop on a move that deserved a diagram. I'll go to war over petty culinary stuff. Are you also a chef? A meat pie. There is no I in team. However, there is an I in pie. Meat pie. I was raised by a single mom as well, and I do not. I mean, I can cook. I can't cook a lot. I am okay in a kitchen at best. No, I don't leave it to the wife. I may make myself lunch when I come back. I haven't decided yet. Or if I'll start right away. Because I am so far behind thanks to... Uh-oh. Okay, Angel, you're on stream again. What's up?
Not yet. I was just telling you, I have stuff in the dryer for 5 more minutes, and then it'll
Okay.
take me about 5 minutes to fold it. So if you want to come like 2:45, we'll be ready to leave, and
All
I'll
right.
direct you
I need to
2:45.
put some shoes on and a shirt, so I will be there
You
and
have
I will
20
talk.
minutes.
Yeah, I know. All right.
Okay.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Angel.
Thanks,
Bye.
Dad. All right. Bye. Love you.
So meanwhile, bishop takes d5. The only way to preserve the I keep sandwiches out of my family relationships, actually. If I can at all help it. This book took a little bit of a beating because I realized that my grandson had shoved my books over, and it's got an awkwardness to it. So in this particular position, knight to c3, attacking the weakened pawn. And it is very difficult, by the way. The grandson is an he is very cool, I have to admit. So let's see here. Just want to make sure of where I am. And rook to c7, bishop to d8, rook to a7, f6, and the moment of truth, knight to d7, rook f7, knight takes b6, rook takes a7, knight takes d5, and after rook to d7, knight on d to c3, black blunders with rook takes d4. Candidates for white. Candidates for white. I am proofing this, so you have a good chance to get it right, regardless. I need to set up a shout out for Quadraspassky for the sub batches, or for the emotes. I chose to go with most of these. Because that was all I could really fit in around some of the others. But I do like them. I just need a thumbs up one and maybe a waving one, if at all possible. The emoticon reactions are the best, yeah. I sort of need a greater laughing one. I think I have it down as hysterical, but I don't know if I could do it. So in any event, I have it in the Discord under the art emote ideas, some other random words. The hard part is choosing the words carefully. Chuck can't believe it's butter is the funniest moment. So here we go. In this particular position, by the way, you should note that the queen on e8 is unprotected, so the rooks came into the game. The rook came into the game. There are some annotators that believe that f3 was a better move. Basically, the knight moves, the queen captures, the knight takes. And everybody's happy all the time. So ultimately, rook on a to e1, f5. Knight to c7. Dogs and cats living together. So here we go. Candidates for white. I believe this is the move. I don't actually look at the camera that much, but I definitely need to look at the camera. Yeah, the generic, I didn't have enough room to fit all the ones, obviously, but shameless self-promo. How many overlays did he do? Stream starting. The only thing that I think I would ever need help with is trying to decide on a stream starting. Herein lies the tale, too, yeah? So basically, I would do the stream starting. I would like to when I redo my layout, because I've already got the ideas. We have this one, we have the monologue layout, in case of just chatting, for the most part. And is there another one? Birthday events. And basically, yeah, the starting soon and the birthday events. And everything else is an extension of the birthday events. All of my bookshelves were well organized thanks to my daughter. I paid her to do them. Uh-oh. Streamlabs is not switching. It may be time. To close some windows. What do I have open? Instagram, the old Twitch, the Twitch stream manager, possibly. I don't think I'm dropping any frames. That's crazy. I'm still not dropping any frames, despite the fact that everything else is working. All right, just to wrap up, the match will be tied after the move. Queen to d7, folks. threatening checkmate and the bishop at the same time. That was a simple fork. That's true. 100, like there's so many chess players, grandmasters and whatnot, right? That do deserve a little bit of recognition from varieties of countries. Wait a minute, what happened here? What happened? Maybe I have to open it again. There we go. And then I have to go to study. That didn't work. Kramnik, Topalov, and we're here. So here's the moment of truth. The moment of truth was, this is the crusher. Queen to d7, threatening mate. And everything around the king. %, Northern English. Now I'm a bit, how to study from chess books. So Pegasus is replying to Quadraspassky. Eatonheimer's PogChamp. Yep, that's the new Pog. That's the Komodo Dragon new PogChamp. So in any event, h6 avoids the mate and the forcing the exchange. And that's the end of the world as we know it. Now, as it turns out, the playoffs began with game 13. And with the playoffs began game 13. Kramnik won the first one. Topalov won the second one. It was probably one of the closest matches with that many decisive games in the match history. It's quite incredible. I remember some of these were really, really haphazard. I don't necessarily know that they reached Armageddon, but for the most part, it was a really, really, really good match overall, to be honest. I love it that somebody like I Am Hungry got me back this morning. I like the way her name, I Am Hungry, can be taken in so many different aspects. Like it's got so many metaphorical divergences that it could mean almost anything. Basically that she's hungry, or that she's got her name in it, I am. Oh no, am I missing? Did I miss the... I think I did. I think I missed the Opferspiel event. The bullet event today. Playing right now. You gats, there's only 20 minutes left. All right, let's do it. We're gonna get a few games in. Alexa, turn off warmer. Alexa, turn off Lasker. There we go. Lasker is my coffee warmer. Oh, what do I need to do here? Can I? What? Fine. Hmm. Oops. That's going to leave a mark. Yeah, yeah. Help! I need to warm up. I need to stay focused. What's going on? Not cool. Not cool at all that I lost that first game. I'm really bummed that I lost that first game. All right. There we go. Yeah, this is why I wanted to end at 2 o'clock. I forgot why I wanted to end at 2 o'clock until I went online and I saw that Offerspiel could be on. All right. And now for something completely ridiculous. Hmm. Oops. Make my day. Wow, I hung 8 and 1. Too slow. Too weak, too slow. I haven't done offer spiel in a while, that much is true. Mm-hmm. Two and two. NG. What will it take to get to the next page? 12 points to get to the next page in 12 minutes? I don't think I can do it. Offer spiel. Um, This could surprise him. Jack Trent. Private Eye. I do need a streak. Was that less than 10 moves? No. I need a win in less than 10 moves. I don't know if I've gotten it yet. Mm-hmm. So far, so good. Offer spiel, baby. Offer spiel. Did I forget about my daughter? Is she going to say anything right about now? Because yes, she should. I do want to know where you're going. Miracle 2029. Can I make page 1, everyone? Can I make page 1? The Offer Spiel League Bullet Arena. I agree, I'm better than you, and you got lucky. Hugh Grant. I don't even know where to begin. That was a nice old-fashioned king hunt. Oops. I gave back a pizza. Like a big pizza pie, that's amore. That is indeed a bummer. Did I lose to somebody I was supposed to beat? Yes. That is the problem with this arena. Masterclass here. Quit round 8 and have a round 9 round. If I joined an arena and left early, I don't think... I mean, Lauren has come up with some reasonable reasons for leaving. Losing is usually the first one. It's hard. The weekend rapid arena, the rapid Swiss, you mean? A lot of people leave and after a thing. Yeah, that doesn't count. So how many games did I get in? 9 games, 3 losses. Not so bad. Terrible performance, terrible average opponent, terrible everything. Have to go pick up my daughter. It is tragic. I really want to know who to raid. We're going to the lovely Chess Bay. Please have a great afternoon, everybody. Quadraspassky, love you, buddy. Talk to you soon. Roken, cheers. I want to thank Pegasus for the great suggestion. VIP, MD Knight, lurking in the background. Eric Keto, Ham Zero. Cheers, Yeatenheimers, Jeff. Have a great afternoon. I hope to see you in a few hours. I hope I have the energy to continue the stream. But I don't think, I think I had to start by 3 o'clock after I picked up my daughter. I really do. I think I needed to start by 3 o'clock to get the 6-hour stream in before my wife came home at... before my wife comes home at 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. So if I can squeeze in 3 hours, that'll be good. Otherwise, I need some time off. I'm going to figure it out. I only owe a few streams now. Cheers. Thanks, Quads. Talk to you soon. Please join the Discord if you're not already in it. Please join please follow the socials if you haven't already. And if you haven't joined the dojo, please do. Yes, that's Claudia. Have a great